So modeling this just at a really basic level is going to be a two-step process with the sweep tool. So I'm going to start in level 1, and I can even see an indicator of it on my floor plan. I'm going to start by going architecture, component, model in place, generic model, and OK. I'm going to create a reference plane because I need to draw that sweep in an elevation view, right? So I'm going to create a reference plane right along the central axis of where that stack is. Once I have that reference plane, I need to select it, and then you're going to get a little indicator. Click here to name. I need to give it a name. If it doesn't have a name, I can't select it later on. So I'm going to give it a name, stack RP for reference plane. Okay. So from here, I'm going to go to my 3D view. And I am going to go to Create, Sweep. I'm going to go to Sketch Path, and I am going to go Set on my reference plane to Stack RP. And again, if I didn't give that a name, it's not going to show up. I could, in theory, use the edge of this wall as my reference plane and then slide it over. A little bit of a slop artist way to do it. Might be how I would do it if I was trying to go really fast. But the correct way to do it probably is to build that reference plane first. Okay, so that I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to turn on show so I can see where I'm drawing, just as a good point of reference. And I know in terms of looking at that, that's about halfway up the window. And then it goes up it should be going up right about the same height as the ridge. Right? There are codes for that. How high your exhaust should be on something like a smokestack in relation to the roof. And usually it's going to be someplace right around the height of the ridge. Basically because we don't want to backfeed into it, right? And blow smoke into the space. That's not any fun. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to start just working in my 3D view. I'm going to set this to wireframe so I can see my glass behind it and I can see that wall. And I'm going to go someplace right around the midpoint of the window along the wall. I'm going to go out a foot. And then I'm going to go up to just above the height of my ridge. Let's set that back to wireframe so you can kind of see what I've drawn. Then I'm going to navigate to, again, the front part of that axonometric view. And I'm going to draw a circle on my reference. Oh, sorry. I need to quit editing the path first. Step 1, drawing the path. Then you green checky box. Step 2, edit profile. Now I'm going to navigate to that front view, create my circle, and draw what I'm guessing is about a 6-inch diameter. So I'm going to draw a 3-inch radius. So I have something like that. So I've got those two pieces. I've got my profile, I've got my path. So I can green checkbox once to accept the profile, green checkbox a second time to accept the path, and I get that. Cool? So that is how I start getting some of those additional pieces coming together. I want to draw one other thing for a ground plane on this, and then we're going to push all of this stuff into Twinmotion. So to do just a really, really, really fast ground plane. I'm not going to get into creating a topography surface yet. If you created a site, remember the very first part of the assignment here was to kind of find and create a site using Format to Revit to Twin. If you have that, you do not need to use this step. This is just so I can kind of show you guys as an example some things that are going to happen in Twin. I'm going to go with architecture of component, model in place, generic models, and OK. And I'm going to set my reference plane as the side of the building. And I am going to go create extrusion. That. Cool? Just something to give me a ground plane to work with because I don't have one. So I'm going to green checky box this and just go like that. And finish. Okay, so I'm ready to send this thing to Twinmotion. Okay, to do that, when I'm sending something to Twinmotion, there are more advanced ways to do this for sure, okay? There is a direct, like you can go onto Twinmotion's website and you can download a plugin for Revit. And it's going to be called, it's either going to be called the Revit Direct Link or it's going to be called DataSmith. It's one of those two names. I'm not sure what they have it called right now. That direct connection is a little bit more ideal for sure, okay? But I do not teach that method. The reason why is it is a third piece of software running on your laptops. And if you have the tendency to get a little bit crashy in Twinmotion, and Twinmotion can be a little bit crashy because it's really asking a crap ton of your laptops, okay? Adding one more piece of software in running at the same time as Revit and Twinmotion can amplify the propensity for it to crash. Okay, so starting when I started teaching Twinmotion 3 years ago or so, I just started gravitating towards this method of using the FBX files. Okay, I would encourage you, once you get comfortable with Revit and with Twinmotion, give it a shot. See if using this direct linking system works. But as you're learning it and as you're learning how to navigate your laptop, I don't recommend it. Even when I'm teaching this in professional offices, this is the first method that I show. Okay? So what we're going to do, we've got to be in a 3D view. We want to export 3D data from Revit. I have to be in a 3D view. I am going to go File, Export, FBX. And then I'm just going to name that Horizon House. I don't need all the extra stuff on there, the extra suffix on there. Just Horizon House.fbx. And I'm going to click Save. Happens pretty much instantly unless you're working on an enormous Revit file. And keep in mind too, okay, this house that I've selected that we're working on is very small. It should be super reliable. Your studio projects are going to be much larger than this. And again, more polygons, more geometry, more things happening, the more likely it is going to be to crash. Okay? But I'm also going to remind you, this workflow that I'm showing, this is not one of those things that you model everything in Revit and say, okay, my Revit model is now done, and now I'm going to start in Twinmotion. That is the worst way to do this, okay? I'm not done with this model. I am only through the exterior, and I don't really even have an idea of my materials yet, and I'm pushing it to Twinmotion. You want to use Twin as a design tool, okay? It is arguably a better design tool than Revit because we are immersing ourselves more into the space with materials, textures. Here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to bring in my Quest, and I'll show you guys how to go immediately into VR, which is something that I am like yay close to requiring for this class is a VR headset. Right now, they're $300, and I just can't quite justify it. but there are headsets that are coming out that are tethered to your computer that are like venturing into the cost of a mouse. And when that happens, yeah, it's going to be a requirement for this class. I also, I forgot to mention this to section 1. I have a demo headset coming from HP. It should be here in another week or two, which also has health monitors on the inside. It tracks your heart rate and your eyes. And so if you just think about this, if I'm trying to make a certain building type for a client, for me, and I would tell them that I'm doing this, that I'm tracking their data, I could be able to track their heart rate and see, are they chill? Are they excited? I can track their eyes. What are they looking at? What are they most concerned about? That's all really interesting data to me that we have never had access before. I can't wait to start manipulating that and seeing what happens. Can I get people to look at what I want them to look at when they have a full 360 view? Can I slow their heart rate down or speed their heart rate up based on the type of space that I'm creating? All really fun stuff for us to be experimenting with prior to building. I'm not sure what the ethics are involved with that yet. But that's why we're doing that here at the university, so that way you can do it ethically when you move out, right? Because it is, like, I used to worry about how we manipulated people doing videos, doing movies about their buildings, because we would put in the score and the sound and make it super dramatic. But I mean, with VR, I mean, it is next level intensity. I mean, you know, so there's really some stuff going on. And it has been debated for a while. If you like do the ethics of architectural rendering, if you Google that, you will find some really interesting commentary. How manipulative are we with the rendering that we're showing prior to construction versus the final product, right? We need to be very aware of that. And VR is definitely going to be amplifying that. Okay, soapbox off. We have saved that as an FBX file. I'm going into Twinmotion. And I'm going to start, again, Twinmotion works top down at this bottom ribbon. So I'm going to go import. I am making sure that I'm importing geometry. Okay, this direct link is something where I can manage if I'm setting up that direct link from Revit. Do not use landscape. We learned that one. That was kind of fun. We're not exactly sure how extensive the functionality is on landscape, but if I have something that I want to be able to manipulate as a landscape, I would be using that. But it will convert your building to a landscape, which is kind of scary. So don't, right? Point clouds. We're not going to get into point clouds this semester. You will get into point clouds in your profession, for sure. That's when you're using a laser scanner or flying a drone around to capture actual space. You can import that as well. But we are importing geometry. I'm going to click open. I'm going to navigate to my FBX file and say open. And I'm going to keep my defaults. The key thing to understand with these defaults is that we are going to define everything by its materials. Okay? There are some additional options there, but this is the method that I want you to use. We are going to collapse by material. And the reason why that method, even though at first glance it seems annoying, it is by far the most efficient way to work. And I always desire for you guys to be able to leave the building earlier and get more sleep. So if I can teach you to work efficiently and quickly and manage your Revit file well, even though you'll forget to thank me later, you'll be thanking me later. Somewhere in your subconscious, you're thanking me later. Okay? So collapse by material and import. So that should have brought my Horizon house in. Yep, it's right there. And so I know the first thing that I want to do is get rid of the default ground plane. Click. And using this method, everything comes in sort of this, I don't know if I love it or hate it, but it comes in this weird clay orange. It's certainly identifiable, right? So let's look at my exterior materials. That is a vertical wood siding, very much pine in its color. It's sort of got a nice yellow cast to it. Right, that's interior stuff, that's exterior stuff. It's pretty sizable, they're not itty bitty. So let's start with this wall material. So I'm going to expand my library over here on the left. And I need to clear off what I was working on. towards the end. We're going to go back, 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 back. All right. Materials, libraries, wood. Let's see if there's not a pine in here someplace. And there's not. Probably because, I mean, pine is something we use all the time in the States. These nice kids are out of France. Probably have no idea what pine is. So maple is pretty darn close. So I'm just going to drag and drop that maple to my exterior wall surface. And then I'm going to zoom in a bit. When you use this FBX method from Revit to Twinmotion, one of the things that it's going to do is your UV maps are basically what defines how a texture applies to a surface. Okay? Your default sizes, everything's going to show up too small in terms of materials on a Revit file. Okay? So if I look at this right now, I've got Maple 01. My scale set to 1. Those are probably like 1/2-inch boards. And I know that they're probably closer to 6-inch boards. So I'm going to scale that up until visually I'm happy with it, which is going to be something about like that. I'm set to 5. I'm not going to open your Twinmotion files and see if you were set to 5 or not. But visually I should be able to tell, is that looking about right? Next, this maple, if I'm working with wood, I usually like to start with one of the lighter colors because the lighter colors are easier to manipulate. That is definitely more of a golden yellow color. And so right here next to maple are these 3 little dots and color. And I can shift that color. I don't want it to be green. That's gross. But I can probably push that to a little bit of a richer yellow color. Wow, it wants to go green so fast. Urgh. So say okay to that. Yeah, that's pretty good. And it's also running the wrong direction. Right? So I need to make that change as well. So we've got right here on the defaults, we have color, reflection, scale, and weather. Underneath scale, if I click more, you're going to see a rotation button. And I can simply rotate that 90 degrees. And now I have that wood siding running vertically. Okay, good. Step 1 done. Actually, I should have done glass first. I almost always do glass first because it defines things so quickly. I usually use, as a starting point in my Twinmotion stuff, I'll use clear glass. Reflective glass seems to be what you want to use. I would encourage you not to go there. Not until you like really know, oh, I need a hero shot. I want to show this reflection because it really matters. There's more opportunities for it to be reflecting something you don't want to see. For instance, a landscape that only extends yay far. So it has more of a tendency to push our renderings into the uncanny valley until you are officially in pro mode. Or the reflection super matters a whole bunch. Okay? So just stick with your clear glass, two-sided glass, something like that. So glass, then we need to get the mullions. Let's go back to this. It is looks like dark, sort of a black color on the mullions. So I'm going to go back, activate metals. Usually I'll use a brushed aluminum, something like that. I'm just going to drag that across, place it on my mullions, and again manipulate the color. Rarely do I go all the way black with something. This is like from the Jackie Warren School of Painting, right? You never use black right out of the tube. You mix it because it usually has some color to it. So I'm never going all the way in. I'm doing something right around here and saying okay. Next, I've got the stack. the metals. So I'm going to go back to my brushed aluminum again. And if I reapply, it is going to give me another version of that brushed aluminum. And there I noticed problem number 1. It painted the landscape the exact same color as my stack. Okay? That is not a Twinmotion problem. That is a how I modeled in Revit problem. Okay, so I need to go back into Revit and set up my materials. Right now, this material and this material are the same thing. And I need to go into Revit and say, nope, those are 2 different objects. And then I'm going to update my Twinmotion scene. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to toggle back over to Revit, and I'm going to zoom out. To change the material of an object in Revit, super easy to do, but you have to know the secret handshake to make it happen. So my custom component objects, I have to be editing their family to get to the material, right? So if I select this ground plane and look at its properties, I am really not seeing anything on the properties that has to do with materials. Not until I select it and say edit in place. Once I do that, I'm now in the mode where I can edit this family. I can select my object, and then I will see material by category. So it does not have a material applied to it at all. So it is going to default. What I need to do is go to material by category, my 3 little dots. And I am going to click down here, create new material. I'm going to rename that ground plane. Okay, in Revit, so that I can kind of see my materials, at least schematically, I do like to go ahead and add in a little bit of tone to these things. So I'm going to go to my Appearance tab, and I'm going to go to its color, and I'm not going to go like the temptation is to make it grass green. But grass really isn't that green, okay? Especially when we're looking at it in rendering modes, okay? I want to get something that is a little bit closer to a green-gray, something like that, so it doesn't jump off the screen obnoxious-like at me. Or when I'm printing it out, green also. So a 2-dimensional plane, green is one of those colors that just jumps off the screen or it jumps off the page and punches you in the face. Sometimes it's a good thing for an architectural rendering. Usually we're wanting to highlight the building, not the ground. So in general, it's kind of a bad thing. So we're going to need to mute that green a whole bunch. So I've got sort of a green-gray selected. I'm going to go to the Graphics tab next. So this is how something is going to appear in a 2-dimensional line, a hidden line version, or a solid shaded version. I need to duplicate that. So I'm going to select Use Render Appearance. So now when I click OK, when I set my view mode to shaded, I'll be able to see that as a schematic color. So I know it's a different material, right? So I'm going to do the same thing with the stack here. So I'm going to go Finish Model. I'm going to select my stack, Edit in Place, select it again, edit the material, create new material, rename stack. A lot of times, academically speaking, I will name things by what they are rather than their material. Professionally, probably want to name it more towards the material, but academically speaking, if I don't know what material it's going to be yet, I'm better off naming it floor rather than wood floor, simply so that I know I can change it quickly and easily, right? I don't want to have something named wood floor and it ends up being slate. Okay, so I'm just going to call that stack. Again, its appearance is a darker color. I'm going to match my rendering appearance to it in Revit and say OK. And finish model. So now I have those 2 pieces. Inside of Revit, what I need to do next is File, Export, FBX. And I'm going to overwrite. I'm not going to create a new version. I'm going to overwrite that existing version. That is true. Is the other one. Thank you. That would have blown my mind. We would have spent 30 minutes trying to figure out what I was doing. Horizon House. Thank you, front row. Right, so I'm going to overwrite Horizon House and say save. I get the little warning box there. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I really, really do. Inside of Twinmotion, I'm going to go back to this upper tab. Okay, that's my FBX file that I imported. All that I have to do is click the little reload button right here, and it's going to update. Okay, everything that's changed material is going to go back to that default orange. So now I can go, that gets brushed aluminum, and it's dark. Okie dokie. My ground plane gets a ground plane material. So I'm going to go back to materials, ground, nature, and I usually start with grassy ground at a much larger scale. Right? So from there, the next thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this really quickly because I almost have you caught up with section 1, so that we can all start at the same point on Friday, which is building renderings. So I'm going to go to vegetation paint, grasses, and let's paint this ground plane with some stuff. Paint. That. Oh, and I should have done this first before I vegetation paint. Always. Always. And I broke my golden rule. Save as. I haven't even saved this file yet. That's not good. Horizon House. Always save as before vegetation paint. Doing this vegetation paint, it is really intensive on your computer. It's trying to calculate real time where to put thousands upon millions of little bitty planes. Lots and lots of geometry. So whether I'm doing trees or grass or whatever, I always try and lock it in your brain, file save, before you do it. Twinmotion on my newer laptop, Twinmotion does not crash very often, but when it does crash, I would say 7 or 8 out of 10 of my crashes come when I'm doing vegetation paint. Okay, so be aware. That is at your crashiest. Let's zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to decrease my painting diameter and get some of this stuff painted under. Like that.
How do you get rid of those like little orange squares that show up?
These little triangle-y thingies?
Like zoom out a little bit. Right there.
This?
Yeah, that. Because sometimes when I do vegetation, a million of those show up and then.
Always paints and filming when I do it.
Okay. Yeah, so the question was, how do I turn off those? There are 2 things that show up. These little triangles are called guides. We can turn them off, and I can get that, but it's going to take me a while to remember where it's at, so I don't want to do that right now. The other question was, how do I not paint on the building? You don't paint on the building by not painting on the building.
Oh,
right?
You just say it's not a ground? That's silly.
No, well, no, because maybe I want a wall growing with grass, right? So. Yeah, so that's one of the key advices is you can break those things apart, right? So I hide the building so it's easier and faster to paint. Usually my thing is I'll decrease the paintbrush size. It's the same thing as like when I'm doing detailed painting, right? Okay. I switch to a smaller brush when I need more detail.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so at this point, I have some basic things set up, right? And so where we're at with this is, wow, those walls are way too green. I've got to fix that later. I want to show you guys. So we have inside of Twin, we have this really good library of stuff that are loaded up with Twinmotion. But one of the buttons right here is sort of your ultimate gateway to ridiculously good entourage. And this isn't the for thousands of trees and thousands of rocks in your scene. This is going to be for the hero rock, which sounds ridiculous, but if you think about it, is super, super important, okay? And that is Quixel Megascans, okay? There are two ways to import these things in. We are going to use the method of importing them in Twinmotion, but I want to show you the website because the website is much easier to browse and see what it is that we can load in. Okay, so Quixel is its own company that Unreal purchased, or Epic Games, I should say, purchased about 3 or 4 years ago. And essentially, they have high-end photography and modeling things, and they go out and scan and build models of all kinds of stuff in all kinds of places. Okay, so for a really high-end, they have two things. Texture maps. Like if I need a really interesting rustic brick, I can probably find something really incredible here. So if I go to their products, browse Megascans, and do surfaces, you're going to see all of these really high resolution bricks to download. Okay, now keep in mind, like inside of Twinmotion, the images that are used as texture maps are really small in size, probably less than a meg. A lot of these are going to be 30 or 40 megabytes in size as a texture map. This stuff, if you use these everywhere, your file size and the speed at which your computer is going to work at explodes. It's going to fall apart really quick. Okay? But for your hero shot, or maybe your hero wall, or a super important flooring surface, something that the camera is going to get very close to that you want to be uber, uber intense with, this is a great place to start. We're going to look at making our own here in a couple of weeks. But this takes what you have in Twinmotion and, I don't know, gives you times 100. I mean, like, look at that. That's awesome. Super cool. Okay, so that's surfaces. The other thing that we have are three-dimensional assets. Yes. There we go. Three-dimensional surfaces. So on three-dimensional surfaces, 3D assets, they have all kinds of things that they have scanned and turned into 3D models. In particular, on this one, would be, like, let's look at nature and snow and the snowy embankment. Okay, so you can sign in to Quixel, and I can download directly from here, right? This is going to give you like 10 different models though. Everything from the model if the camera is inches away from this surface or if it's a mile away. And that's called LOD. You'll see that. Levels of detail. And really, Twinmotion isn't set up to work that way. The Unreal game engine is, but we're not in Unreal. We're in Twin. Okay? So what I want to do is I'm using this. It's easier to visually browse here on the website. But I'm going to take note. This is named Snowy Embankment. Going into Twinmotion, I can go into Quixel Megascans. I want to say Megascans. I did that first class too, over and over again. I'm going to go to 3D Assets. That's probably in nature. It's probably embankments. It's covered in snow. Snowy embankment. Right up here, top right. Now these, I have to be online to see these things. I've got to be connected to the internet because these do not come installed with Twinmotion. Your Twinmotion file that's already like 40 gigabytes would be like 4,000 gigabytes if all this stuff shipped with. Just a second.
So you have to go and download each of those individually?
Each one at a time.
And it will kill your computer speed.
If I do 1,000, so the question is, will it kill the computer speed? If I do 1,000 of these, yes. You will go from a file, right now this file is probably like 20 or 30 megabytes. You will get into the gigabytes range really, really fast if you aggressively use these. But if I use like 10 different things from Quixel, these 3D assets, you're not going to notice any difference at all. Okay, so the process, I click the download button. Once there's no download icon, I know it is downloaded. I can drag and drop that across. And it's going to place, wow, that came in super small. So let's change its scale. And now it's going to move it into place. And rotate it just a bit. Oops. And let's change the environment for everybody. And blammo. Right? So, Quixel, use it correctly. Don't use it aggressively. Use it intelligently because they are incredible. What those little features do, like just having this, I mean, you can model in Revit all you want. You're not going to get those kind of rocks. You're not going to be able to get those things that keep your renderings out of the uncanny valley. That is an actual cliff with actual snow on it, done and rendered and 3D modeled, that click, click, I can bring it in, and all of a sudden, guys, the quality of your visuals go up tenfold with a snap. You just have to have it in your imagination what scenery you're trying to build. Cool? That's it for the day, y'all. I will stick around for questions and all that stuff.